Order. First item of business is consideration of the minutes of 5/12/11.
I'll move to approve the minutes of 5/12.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item number 2 is the final development plans for Walgreens retail store, 14,490 square feet at 141 Carmichael Road, west of Carmichael Road and north of I-94. Mr. Darnell.
There's only a few minor changes that were required from the concept plans to the final. In Carmichael Road to the east, shared driveway between the Carmichael commercial area offices, and then also the driveway shared with Culver's, exit to Culver's and exit here also. Some of the comments were about putting the stops. There is a stop bar, stop sign here now, and we'll talk to the property owner about putting a stop sign down here. The changes from the civil engineering plans have been made. There's always a couple of minor changes, just really some notations on the plans themselves. And as far as the building, John, I don't know if you want to review again, but basically brick facade with glass on all 4 sides of the building. This will be the south side and the east side, which are two most visible facades on the building. Recommend approval with the city engineer comments of 520.
Okay.
Mr. John Kohler, Semper Development's here to answer any questions you may have.
Anybody have any questions, or is anyone ready to make a motion?
I'll move for approval.
I'll
Is there
second.
a second? We're going to second. Now, anybody have any questions? This is the second, again, we took a look at it at preliminary. Not a whole lot of changes from preliminary.
I have one question. On looking at the south side, it looks like there's 3 entrances to the building. And I'm questioning the center one. Is there, is there a need, or just one? This is not accurate?
Right here, looking at
Or am I misunderstanding?
Oh, you're talking about the driveways. I'm
The
sorry.
driveways,
Oh, I
yes.
thought you meant into the physical building.
No, and the driveways, and I'm just thinking, if there's 3 places where they're coming out of there onto that service road, is that a bit much?
Well, I think the reason that there are 3, this is obviously an easement going all the way up.
Right.
This gives us access here. What we don't want is this to be a dead-end parking lot.
Okay.
So that's what this is for, and then this is just a one-way to come around for service and for the drive-through.
Okay.
So that's the reason for those.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
And it's not busy back in there either.
No, I know, but that's a lot of little spurs there. That's what
Okay.
they asked.
All those, unless there's any questions, we'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
That'll be on the June 6th council meeting, John.
Great, thank you.
I didn't ask him what kind of windows he's using.
No, you didn't. You're losing your touch.
Next item on the agenda is accessory dwellings to be allowed above detached garages in 1- and 2-family residential districts. Amendment to zoning code 255-28, accessory buildings and structures.
I did visit with Catherine McKittrick, city attorney, in regards to some of the concerns expressed by the planning commission last meeting. She did send out a memo to this city attorney association in Wisconsin and received a couple of responses. Basically, the only additional things that were noted in the responses, one is maybe setting a minimum area of 600 square feet. I think that's too big of a minimum. If you have a 2-car garage, you're commonly 440 square feet. So if you're going to set a minimum at all, it should be 400. And maybe you don't even want to set them. I just bringing out what comments we received. Limiting a dwelling unit to 1 bedroom. Again, you know, how much flexibility that allows. And the last was to be occupied by a person related to the owner of the principal dwelling unit by blood, marriage, or adoption. Kathy and I are not suggesting adopting that consideration. We just think that if you're gonna have this type of, if you're gonna try to make affordable housing, allow some flexibility in the housing, you know, the house sells, and that next owner may or may not be able to meet that criteria of the unit being occupied by blood marriage. However, we do think that the condition that the owner has to occupy either the accessory dwelling or the principal residence is a reasonable requirement, basically because then the owner is on the site and able to overlook the units. And as far in regards to rental, Kathy and I both feel that we don't discriminate or prohibit units from being rented, so anywhere in the city of Hudson, so that provision should not be attached to this type of a dwelling unit. So I'm recommending, if if you feel comfortable, again, this issue's been reviewed a couple times and probably over the last 10, 15 years, both times before, at least the 2 times before I recall looking at it, we did not do anything. Not all communities have this. It's becoming more and more popular. But I would, I think the 9 conditions that or standards I've stipulated, plus the conditional use permit requirement, so it would have to go through a public hearing. Neighbors would be invited to come in and comment on the proposal. Other than that, if you wanted to set a 400 square foot minimum, I'm not opposed to that, but I'm not sure a minimum is really necessary. And limiting it to 1 bedroom, pretty small unit, probably, you're gonna have a 1 or 2 bedroom unit, probably nothing more than that ever. So I'm not sure that's a standard that we necessarily need to consider. Yes,
I have
sir.
2 questions. I understand that the city zoning right now for a garage, garage for garage space is 1,000 square feet right now. Is that correct?
And maximum.
Maximum, okay, and so the dwelling can be no greater. If this is above the garage, that's in addition to the 1,000 square feet that is already allotted for the garage itself proper,
You're
correct?
going vertical, not horizontal.
Okay. Let me ask a second question. If we pass this and there are these type of units existing in the city of Hudson that don't meet this minimum criteria that you're already there, what is the status of
Well,
those?
you're grandfathered in. We cannot require them to
Okay.
meet the standards.
Thank you.
I'd like to move that we adopt what you have presented there, Danny, these 9 conditions.
Okay, is there a second? Second. Any other discussion on this? I think it's a good compromise, and I agree with Mr. Darnold that I don't want to limit it to a relative. I think that's almost unenforceable. I think there's some people that go south for the winter, somebody stays to watch their house, but they may not be related. So I think this makes sense. I don't know if anybody else. Kevin?
I have one question.
Sure.
So if somebody does this and they sell their property and then second ownership or whatever, it ends up that the primary owner is not in one of those buildings, either in the primary or the above the garage, what would be the city's?
Well, we could, in the approval of the conditional use permit, make a requirement and an affidavit has to be filed or recorded at the Register of Deeds office, so it's attached to the property. So the owner is notified when they purchase that property as a condition of the property.
Okay, I think that'd be a good idea, so they know what they're getting into.
Good point. Any other thoughts?
You want to add that as the 10th?
I think so.
Yes.
You're okay with that?
Yeah.
I'll amend the motion now, yes.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The next item is the amendment to zoning code 255-18 St. Croix River Scenic Riverway Regulations Community Development Officer, Mr. Darnold.
Well, over a number of years, the city has tried to put together a local riverway regulations. The city currently adopts NR 118, the National Scenic Riverway Regulation by reference. About 4 years ago, new provisions required communities to adopt their own local regulations, and really one of the stipulations is that communities could write their own regulations within the guidelines and adopt them. Well, they went into the DNR attorney, they reviewed, they comment back and forth. I thought there was some overreach on a couple of items. One of them was as simple as you can only have 4 units in a bed and breakfast. We allow 6, but DNR says, no, you can't allow 4 in the Riverway. And I go, what expert assigned you to make that judgment? I mean, that's as simple as that. So there's some overreach in some of these considerations. I've adjusted ordinance to the point I feel comfortable that the city can adopt it. There was one provision of DNR, and I have consistently battled in regards to, and they say that any permitted use has to have a standard. Well, you stop and think about all the permitted uses that a community as dynamic as the city of Hudson is, you cannot have a standard for every permitted use. That's like trying to have a standard for some guy that wants to sell popsicles downtown. I mean, just think about it. I mean, so, basically we're referencing back to the city zoning code, what's permitted in the city of Hudson, what our standards are. I gotta believe that the city of Hudson's probably done as good a job administrating the NR 118 regulations of any community jurisdiction along the St. Croix River. I have to believe that. There's about, if you go to, first, I had it marked in yellow, page 4, one of the changes that was proposed was just adding a boundary map legal description that'd be available to Community Development Office. I mean, that's not controversial. It's just a matter of providing a map and legal. It's all that amounts to. Next proposed change was the plan development on page 8. I felt quite strongly about this when I wrote the draft. Basically, this plan development would give the city some more flexibility to do planned commercial, planned industrial, planned residential developments. The requirement in the NR 118 regulations call them planned cluster developments, which is the definition above that, but basically refers to residential. The vast majority of areas that would be subject to this type of development is probably the residential area, and probably this area in the community I would cite most likely we'd look at is the area north of Lakefront Park on the west side, or anything on the west side of 2nd Street, between 2nd Street and the river, where maybe a portion of a neighborhood could be redeveloped, and the flexibility of a planned development could actually provide more green space, provide more interesting design in the Riverway District than what the standard Riverway regulations. But I'm willing to concede that to get this ordinance passed. So we still have the option of planned cluster development, but at this point, we really need to get this ordinance adopted, because there is a provision in the state statute that says that communities don't adopt their local ordinances, DNR can require an ordinance to be adopted by DNR, which the city would have to, and we would lose some administrative authority. Part of that authority is that I worked on very hard was to get variances could not be overruled by DNR, zoning changes, and if DNR can adopt this regulations, they can override variances, those types of things. So we lose some administrative authority that I would sorely hate to lose. So that's the main reason I'm really pushing for the city to adopt it now. The second provision on page 8 is a note on reasonable accommodations. That's something that's required. It's pretty much standard language in all the community regulations. Several of the next changes, page 17, historic preservation. We did adopt a downtown overlay district 2 years ago, and we're just referring to that as our historic preservation ordinance, because that really applies to the downtown area where the historic area is, or one of our two. The other historic area in the city of Hudson's outside the Riverway district. Page 18, this language that was proposed no longer is applicable and has been proposed to be deleted. That has to do with erosion control. Same thing on page 21. Also page 27.
Page 24 is where you referenced the 4 on the bed and breakfast.
No, I'm sorry, Fred, I skipped over that.
Well, no, you only yellowed the 4, so it was easy to miss.
Yeah, that's, I had it noted in my notes, but I skipped over it, yeah. So page 24, in subsection 10A, again, 4 instead of 6.
They won't accept that?
Well, they've argued with me on that. Again, that's my primary example where I think is overreach by DNR on.
They won't accept 6, right?
That's
They want us
correct.
to make it 4. So what do we do with the ones that already have 6?
They're
Are
not
they?
in the-
No, if they'd either be grandfathered in, or if they're not located in the scenic Riverway, it doesn't apply. The Phipps Center for the Arts is not in the Riverway.
Okay.
Could you change the wording of that A to just say the bed and breakfast establishment shall conform to City of Hudson?
Well, then that makes it 6, and that's,
Well, no, that's what I'm doing. You're saying the same thing without saying it, is what I guess
well,
I'm...
and again,
Okay.
to put this to rest, to give them on that, it's not a
Big deal.
that large of a issue for me. I'm not sure we have a lot of buildings or structures in the remainder of the Riverway area that would accommodate 6 units for
Is
bed
the-
and breakfast anyway.
The
So
Phipps
4
Inn is not.
4 is,
Question I have is on page 25.
okay,
Non-conforming uses and structures and substandard lots. For some reason, that just got me a lot. Non-conforming use may not be expanded or enlarged. And the question I have, do we have any non-conforming
Well,
now?
even anywhere in state statute, you cannot do that. That's a provision that applies to our whole city, not just this Riverway.
But from the standpoint, if we were to make it conforming, it says you can't expand to make it conform? I mean, that's how I read
No.
it, but
So non-conforming use means you got a building with a use that is not permitted. So why are you gonna allow somebody to expand a building so they can expand their non-conforming use?
okay, okay, gotcha.
Now, if you've got a non-conforming standard, basically you can expand it within limits.
Okay,
So it's the term, the important term there is use.
okay,
And state statute also has provisions in it that you cannot expand a non-conforming, you cannot expand a building where a non-conforming use occupies that building, because then you'd be allowing
let's
the
go-
use to be.
yeah, let's go to 2 then. And that is use, not a building that doesn't conform, right? But it says maintenance or repair of non-conforming principal structures. Again, if you had a,
Well, it says maintenance repair is allowed.
right, but what if it's, again, if this has to do with use, not the structure.
No, in that case, it says a non-conforming principal structure, that means it doesn't conform to dimensions.
Okay. And again, I go to the question about, they may want to expand it to make it, why wouldn't a building be, the structure conform? It's too small? It's,
Maybe too close to the river.
okay,
But what the ordinance does say, this ordinance does say they can expand the building up to a certain percentage as long as you're not expanding it towards the river.
river.
Okay?
Okay.
So I looked at that section very closely. I feel
Okay.
comfortable with what what's in it.
I just don't want, if we have a piece of property that we want to improve, somebody wants to improve it, I don't want to be limited.
Well, and that's, I mean, I've looked at that section very, very closely.
Okay.
I feel comfortable what's in
Okay.
it. It's something
That's fine.
okay for the community.
Benny, can you educate me on something?
Sure.
I think I know the answer, but I just want to make sure. This entire packet that we're reading, did this come from the state and then you put your own changes in it, or did you, I mean,
No, well.
did you tailor this
what-
yourself to Hudson?
Well, I borrowed another ordinance and tailored it to Hudson.
Okay.
But about 90% of what's in this proposed draft is in NR 118, the state administrative rules. You really don't have a lot of flexibility to vary that much. You still have to, you have to adopt their minimum standards.
Sure.
You can be more restrictive, but and this, this has gone back and modified. I mean, I don't know how many hours I've spent on this, but I feel pretty comfortable with it.
My question would be, what is in here that is above the existing standards already?
Nothing. Nothing's more stringent than existing standards.
Except for the bed and breakfast.
You're correct, that's the only one. But I'm aware of
Nothing
it.
is more stringent than what is already, then why do we have to have this?
Because
If
that's
we
what-
already have things more stringent.
That's what the state
It doesn't make
statute
any
says,
sense to
that
have
local
this.
ordinance shall adopt.
Okay, then if somebody wants to do something, whose ordinance takes precedent? This one or
Yes.
ours?
Ours does. This is ours.
This is ours.
You mean this
If we
one or the
adopt it, this is
DNR one?
ours.
If we don't,
Okay, well, this is, but we already have one. This is in addition to what we already have.
Currently, our zoning code adopts NR 118 by reference. That's the way we've administered it since it was initiated.
So the
back
only
in
reason to adopt this
State
is
statute.
state statute, and if we don't, the DNR can.
We're being held hostage, either we adopt something or they're gonna impose their.
Well, I'll say that another way. I'll make a motion to approve this for two reasons. As Denny has tailored this for the city of Hudson, and number two, so somebody else isn't telling us what to do and we are controlling our own destiny. For those two reasons, I think that's very important that we proceed on
I would
this.
agree with you wholeheartedly, Fred.
So,
I'll
sorry,
second.
go ahead.
Okay, there's a second for,
So let's say a developer comes in and wants to build some sort of, and I know we only allow a certain number of feet high up in the air, but let's say they want to, ask for a change in the use and come in for, make some sort of development, hotel development or something on the river, condo development on the river. Is this gonna, I know we're already limited, but if they come in and ask for a change in that, are we gonna be able to give that change if we see that it's a
They
good
ask for a
fit?
variance?
Yeah,
Yes. I mean,
it's not gonna hold us
What-
back and stuff like that.
and that's one of the things I fought for in the previous to allowing the cities to adopt their local ordinances. The DNR had the right to come in and veto or basically override a city's decision on variances. I argued during the 8-year process of rewriting these regulations, DNR shouldn't have that authority. That should be a local authority.
Right.
Should be a decision made by local authorities. So when the regulations are changed, DNR now is limited to, they're invited or sent a public hearing notice of the variance. They can come in and they can, just like any other resident, can comment where they're in favor, but they can't override the local jurisdiction. My fear is if we don't eventually adopt this, the thing is that they adopt it on our behalf and all of a sudden they have that authority back again. And that's the last thing I want to get to the DNR.
We had those issues come up with the proposed development of the River City Center 4 or 5 years ago, and Alan, you were here and I was here, and some of these issues that Denny is referencing were brought up, and at that time, the DNR had the trump card. And-
That's why I didn't
And
get-
by us adopting it, we turned the tide, and I guess that's one of the two reasons I listed as to why we
Well,
should.
I just, to me, it's a very fundamental consideration. Local jurisdictions ought to have the authority to make decisions and not be vetoed by the DNR.
Right.
That's a very fundamental right I think communities should have, and I fought very hard for an 8-year period of when those regulations were being rewritten to get that, and that, you know, to give that back to them because we don't adopt this, I just think it's a huge mistake.
Mary Claire?
So just a quick question. So if somebody, and I apologize, I don't know who owns that old Norlake building along
Tim.
there. Okay, but I don't know if it's still, anyway, so but there's still opportunity through this ordinance if somebody wanted to do something with that building or that space within the certain guidelines to do something?
Well, you'd have to, first of all, the property is zoned two-family residential.
Right.
If they want to do something other, they would have to come back, change the comprehensive plan.
Right, right,
Have to change the zoning on it.
yes.
And then the development would have to meet all the guidelines that are stipulated in this.
But I mean, I'm just following up on Mary's question, I mean, just so, and your question of not be, limiting something that needs to be or has an opportunity to be redeveloped or fixed.
Wouldn't this be a non-conforming building right there?
Well, no, I think they're probably set back 40 feet from an ordinary high water mark. They're probably, 100 feet from an ordinary high water mark. They're probably 40 feet back from the slope of 12% or greater. Question would be,
Height?
well, right now, you can go up, they could go up as high as 35 feet with a building. Any residential property can go up to 35 feet. Any property in the central business district can go up to 45 feet.
Okay.
Yeah, and I echo the same concerns, and that's why we kind of tabled this last August, was in case there is some type of development along the stretch here, we want to make sure we're not handcuffed.
But I feel like we're handcuffed either way.
Handcuffed.
I'm
Well,
a little
I mean,
conflicted right now in my mind,
Well,
so. I understand what you're saying, Fred, and I think what Kevin said was a good point to bring out, is that it's no more restricted than what we are, we're no more stricter than what we are now outside of the bed and breakfast. I'm just, I don't know.
You have
Some
to-
things don't seem to add up in my head.
You
so.
have to look at that another way too, is that if you don't meet the minimum DNR criteria, which Denny has been very careful to meet
Right.
that, any variances, you know, you get the Sierra Club, anybody that, you know, is watching this type of stuff keenly to see what any community is doing, we'd hear about it, believe me. I mean, any variance on height,
Yeah.
setbacks, all of this stuff, they'd come at us like a freight train, you know, if we were to allow any huge changes. And so by conforming to that thing, but us having control versus them, I think is call it the lesser of evils, but the better of the two situations.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying.
I worked on a piece of property elsewhere in the state and ended up having to go through the DNR. I don't ever want to do that. And that was a long rip.
I'm not asking you to recommend approval tonight. If you want to take it, read it, come back on June 16th, discuss it again, I'm fine with that. I just want to be able to tell DNR we're trying to move towards adoption on this.
When do we, how much time do we have to adopt this? You're on kind of a deadline, aren't you?
Well, no, we've been on deadline for about 4 years. The point is, I don't want to all of a sudden the DNR say, well, you guys are just dragging your heels, you're never going to adopt it, we're going to adopt something for you. It's time for us to finish our cut bait on
Well,
this.
Well, I made a motion.
I seconded.
One other question, we had talked to our state rep about this at all? Former mayor, state rep?
No, I haven't.
I haven't either.
There's some legislative issue if we feel strongly about that, or are you okay with how this is done, honestly?
I just assume proceed. If the state legislature wants to change something, they change it, and we can address it at that time.
Call for the question.
Okay.
Call for the vote.
Sorry.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No.
Fail.
Failed 4-3.
You guys are making a mistake.
I think one of us that voted against can bring it back. I really.
I want to bring it
I'm-
back, I just want to have them look at it.
I want a little
Okay,
bit more
look
time.
at it. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, if that's your purpose for voting no, I have
That was
absolutely
my
no.
problem. That
I
was-
want
I
to
have
look at
no-
it more.
yeah, that's
I'd like it
fine.
on the
No.
next agenda.
Yeah, we'll put it on June 16th.
I'd like to read through it in more detail.
Yeah.
So
That's,
that-
no, that's fine.
Absorb it.
I'm not pushing, but, you know, if you're gonna say no altogether, I think you're making a serious mistake.
No, I just really only had an hour or two to look at it. I would like
All
more
right, no,
time.
that's fine.
Okay. Any other business for informational purposes only for upcoming?
Yeah, next meeting is on June 16th. We do have a public hearing in regards to the stair proposal by the Parks Department on the Toll Bridge or Dyke Road. And then this issue also will be brought back where there's any other additional issues, but those two issues for sure will be on the agenda.
I will not be here.
All right, Kevin, were you?
June 16th?
June 16th, I
said you were
think
gonna be
I'm
gone,
out.
too.
Yeah, I'm gone, yep, I'm gone.
So if you can't be at, for some reason, something comes up, you can't be at the June 16th, please let me know, so,
Sure, we have a quorum.
appreciate it, yeah. Other than that,
Anything else?
no,
Motion to
appreciate it.
adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Right.
Meeting is